Rev up your engines!
Well, here we go again with old Elon. Again, he raised the price of the Model Y. He raised it $1,000 this time. Now, originally, they were 50 grand. Now, with all these different price changes, I believe he raised it 8 times, it's $59,000. He's hoping that the tax credit will help, because, you know, the government's saying you can get up to a $7,500 tax credit. Here's something I don't understand. Who buys these things? People who make a lot of money. If you buy the fancy ones, with a lot of power. The more power they have, the more you get. The maximum of $7,500 off. Now they're talking about they're going to tax the rich. They're giving the rich a tax break here. Hypocrisy of these politicians is just too much. Where's this magic money going to come from? That's a tax on the poor, actually. It's the rich aren't paying. They're paying less if they buy one of these cars. Basically, they're subsidizing the purchase of these cars, and then people will buy more, so they're basically subsidizing the car companies. I thought we lived in a capitalist free market myself. The BS that flies in Washington these days, who knows? Now, this is pending in the Build Back Better logo of the Democrats now. The guy sent me a bumper sticker the other day. I couldn't help but laugh. It says, "Make America mediocre again." Or maybe make America bankrupt again. He keeps raising the price, just figuring, oh, what's $1,000? Well, so this year he went from 50 to 59 grand on a second, over 59. It was more than 9 total. You know, $9,000 isn't much to the richest man in the world, but for you and me, you're not making more money, you're not getting more stuff, and then, oh, I'll just add another 9,000. Who cares, you know? People will buy the stupid things. Well, maybe they won't. And who knows if the tax credit thing will come out. And if it does, we're all paying for it. We're subsidizing rich people buying expensive electric cars. And the funny thing is, the more expensive they are, the more power, the bigger the batteries, the bigger the brake. The 7500 is only for the top end one. It's not for the cheap Nissan Leafs and stuff. It's only for the real expensive ones with the real long range. So they obviously have made a law to help the rich out. The more expensive your car, the bigger the tax write-off. Yes, we live in strange times indeed. Mohammed K12 says, Scotty, how do you know if the car mileage is real when you're buying a used car? There's computer nerds out there. They can set back those digital speedometers. Somebody can go to a junkyard and buy a whole one from a lower mileage one and stick it in the car. Basically, you want to pay a mechanic to check it out. I can tell if a car's got 50,000 or 150,000. The wear patterns and stuff is easy for me. But you can use things like Carfax. I'm not the greatest fan of them as a 100% test of a used car. But they're really good for one thing, and that's mileage. Because they have the records of all the state inspections, and each year it has the mileage. So you see the mileage, make sure it goes up each time. Maybe the oil changes, try to get records of the oil changes and see if that meshes with what was in the car. They can't hide that. That's public record. And so if the state inspected it 8 times, and it had 7 times ago, it had 150, and then 8 it had 75, you know, the odometer was replaced or set back. So that's one of the better ways to do it. Now, they might tell you the car wasn't in a wreck with Carfax and some of those things, and it might have very well been in many wrecks. I've seen that. But the mileage, that's a pretty good way to get the mileage on it, because that can't really be hidden. It's public record when you get your car inspected. It's a good way to look at that. Mark Sears says, I got an 05 Acura. The wrong battery was installed, and it might have fried the system. I don't know. I put a new battery, and it shows no life. Nothing comes out at all. All right. First thing you want to do is check all the fuses. Cars have many fuse boxes. That Acura's got at least 3 separate ones. You want to start under the hood with the main ones. Check all the fuses. Pray somebody just blew a fuse. I've seen that happen many times. People connect them wrong. If you're lucky, it popped a fuse. If you're not lucky, it popped the main computer, and they cost a fortune on those Acuras, and the car has to be reprogrammed. It's a real pain in the butt. But check every fuse, every wire, make sure everything's connected right. Sometimes you get lucky and it just pops a fuse. But realize, computers don't use much power, and a lot of times when you put something in wrong, it's fast enough, all that. You got a battery that's got 600 amps. It could fry that computer long before that fuse pops. So check all the fuses and all the fuse boxes. There's tons of them. Now, if you're too lazy to pull them all in and out, because that's a job, get yourself a cheap test light, and then you test them. Turn the key on. Is there power on one side, power on the other? If there's only power on one side, not the other, you know the fuse is blown. You can replace it. Pray it's something like that. Ahmed says, is it true that front tire blowouts are much more dangerous than the rear tire? How to deal with it when it happens? Is it really unsafe to use brakes? Well, yeah, it is. And this is a gripe that I've had for years with people. Lately, and it started years ago, these tire guys said, when you buy new tires, put them on the back and put the other tires on the front. Baloney. Cars are front wheel drive. Your engine is pulling. those tires. They need the best traction. Your stopping power is the front tires, not the back tires. They said, well, you're going to blow it in the back, blah, 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 blah. You're going to blow it in the front, it's worse. You're steering with the front. I don't know where these people come up with this nonsense. And I had an argument with a guy for years. He said I was an idiot, didn't know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, no, it's just stupid. And all the tire places say, well, we got to put the new tires on the back because that's the regulations we have at the store. You know, fools following fools, the sheep following the other sheep, you know? It just really amazes me. When you have a flat in the front, you're losing all kinds of stuff. And you don't want to slam on the brakes. You want to take your foot off the gas and try to gradually go to the side of the road. If you do want to slow down and you have a normal car, most cars, the emergency brake operates the back brakes. So if you get a flat on the back, you could coast, and while you're pulling, you could pull the emergency brake up a little to stop back ones from spinning. But that's what you want. You don't want to hit the brakes because you got one flat and one straight. And ABS systems work to a certain extent, but with a flat tire, the systems really don't operate all that well. That's why you want good tires in the front. I don't care what these knuckleheads say. Granted, you should never have bald tires. So if you got bald tires in the front and bald tires in the back, you want to buy 4 tires. Or let's say you got bald tires in the back and you're buying new tires to the front. You don't put the bald tires in the back and the front because they say, well, we're putting the new tires in the back. We'll put your bald ones in the front. That would be stupid too. You always want to have good tires regardless. HDR Pro Scotty, is it dangerous to drive a car with tires that are 10 years old that have a lot of tread? Well, it can be because rubber ages. It has a tendency of getting hard and brittle, so you lose traction, right? The main thing is look closely in the bright sunlight at all the tires. And if they're getting cracked, that's dry rotting. Now, some tires, they tell you they never last 10 years, but I've had some that lasted 10 years. But once they start cracking, they're dry rotted and they're dangerous. So don't drive them if they're cracked and dry rotted. We don't drive much, my wife and I. When she worked, the school was 3 miles away, so she commuted 6 miles a day. And on her old Toyota Cressida, it came with 4 good tires. Well, those tires are like 10, 12 years old, right? She got a flat tire down the street, and I went and I looked, and I thought, gee, you know, I never even thought about these tires. Then I realized they were like 12 years old, and they had 90% of their tread, but I saw they were all cracking, so then I fixed the flat one and then just bought a set of 4 new ones, and that was the last I ever to buy for that car before we sold it to one of my customers when we got the Lexus. And you might do some tests, like try braking hard, and if they skid, especially in the rain, they're too hard, and it's time to get new ones. David Tran Media says, my 2014 Lexus IS250F Sport has a V6. When it idles, it's like 800 RPM, sometimes dips to 7 or 6 and goes back to normal. Should I be worried? I wouldn't worry about it, but watch my video. Make your car run better with a little spray cleaner. You clean the mass airflow sensor with mass airflow sensor cleaner. Only use that on those. You can't use any other kind of cleaner. Clean the throttle with throttle spray cleaner. Both cans will cost you maybe 12 bucks for the whole thing, right? Follow the video. Clean the throttle to get the carbon off. Clean the mass airflow sensor. Let it dry for an hour before you put it back on. And it'll probably stop doing it. Any car over time, carbon will build up in the throttle a little. And when it does, it doesn't close perfectly. When it doesn't close perfectly, that has the throttle position sensor. And since it's not closed perfectly, the throttle position sensor won't go to 0. Maybe it'll be at 5 degrees, 8 degrees. That means the computer thinks it's open a little, gives it an extra amount of gas, and it'll make the idle fluctuate. Cleaning it will often fix it. If you don't care, it's not going to hurt anything. You'll have a nice car. You might as well clean it, make it run as good as it can. And if you find that work, next time it does it, clean it again. You might only have to clean it once every 3 or 4 years. You don't have to do it very often. And do make sure you got a clean air filter, because that's real important for it. Jack Burkhart said, Scotty, what happened to the veterans flag that was behind your shoulder on the shelf? Okay, this is a different shelf. This is the Rhode Island shelf. The other one's in Tennessee. Now, if you look, there's different flags. I have a Tennessee flag over there. And I have the original flag of Texas independence. So I'm always keeping you people on your toes, and you're noticing it. If you see the veterans flag, that means it was filmed in Tennessee. If you see this one, it means it was filmed in Rhode Island. I like different flags. And those are interesting flags. And that's the American flag came from my son. He was 101st Airborne in Afghanistan for a couple of tours. He won an Army Air Medal, and they give all these flags that actually flew on missions, and everybody in the family got one. That's sitting back in Tennessee. Hi, hello, says Scotty. Is it okay to mix Toyota Haute coolant with Prestone's Universal Green coolant? Color is meaningless. It's just a dye. If you're talking about a long life, modern coolant, find out if it's an Haute coolant, organic acid technology. Toyota is hybrid hybrid organic acid technology. Now, the hybrid stuff just lasts longer. So that can go 7 years, 150,000 miles. Where the oat, they say to change it like every 5 years or 100,000 miles. It doesn't last quite as long, but they're totally interchangeable. It doesn't matter. You basically oat and oat. The hybrid, little bit of difference doesn't really hurt anything. It's a more quality one. It'll last longer, the oat and Toyota. Any organic acid technology can be used in any modern car. The color doesn't mean anything today. Back in the day it meant something, but now it's just a dye they put in, so they want to distinguish themselves from other people. But don't use the old-fashioned green coolant that is inorganic acid, IAT. That you don't want to use. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.